Don't know if I should tell that story. I'm going to pretend I didn't start at that point, if I'm being honest. I'm such an idiot. Flipping heck. Don't know. That's a total lie.
This is what I was just going to do, to be honest.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a primary school teacher. I'm currently teaching in the UK. I'm a second year teacher. I am by no means an expert at anything in life. I literally can't ever decide what to have for breakfast in the morning. I have a teacher Instagram. It's Happy with Miss H. Good luck editing that into a fancy way, Sophie, but you can't do it. Lots of people have been asking me about tips for job interviews, for teaching and university interviews. It seems like it's this time of year again. I don't think I filmed a video on this last year because I don't actually think I'd started my YouTube channel. I think, if I recall, I did a few Instagram stories, but they are really cringe, so they won't ever see the light of day again. I'm just going to run through my interview experience, the interview that I had at university and then for jobs, and give you kind of my best tips. I'm no means an expert. It's my experience. It might help. It might not. Just please don't take everything I say to heart. Before I share my own interview experience at the end of the video, I'm going to kind of give you the best advice I was given and the things that I have learnt from applying for jobs. The first thing, in terms of when you're applying, have a think about what type of school you might like to work in. Have a look at the catchment area, have a look at the previous Ofsted report, and the school website are a great place to start. I knew when I was applying that I wanted a church school, so I kind of had a look on the school council website, had a look there, found the church schools that I liked, kind of researched them, looked at Ofsted report, looked at if they had any social media, looked at their social media, just to kind of get a grip of the school and get a grip of the school, just to kind of get a view of the school. After you have found the school that you would like to apply for, I would highly suggest going to visit that school. They usually offer visits. If they don't offer visits, then I would take that as a red flag, but that's just my opinion. Usually super happy to accommodate if you want to visit them. In terms of when you can do that, lots of people do that after school, or I was lucky enough to get time out of my placement to go and do that as well. Going to visit the school is great because you're able to see the environment that the school is in. If it's during lesson time, you can see how the lessons are conducted. It's a really great way to kind of get an insider's point of view. And if you're able to talk to any other teachers at your interview or at the look around, then I also think that's a really great insight as well. I was able to speak to one of the teachers who I'm now really close to at my interview, and it was fab. It was lovely, and it's just nice. It kind of gives you an insight into the school that you might not have expected. When you're writing your application for a teaching job, usually they have a person spec, which I would highly suggest having a look at that specification and tailoring your personal statement. A really easy way I found to do this was printing off the person's spec and having a highlighter, having my laptop, and if they were kind of like, we are looking for, obviously if it wasn't something that was relevant to me, then I didn't lie because I feel like I would get caught out and I'd be dishonest and it wouldn't be nice. So for example, at mine they said they wanted someone with who could use ICT, so then I would highlight that off in my personal statement. I would talk about how I used ICT regularly in lessons, and making sure you hit all those points makes you look like the best candidate for that job. Usually you are asked to do a lesson observation. I would have a look, and what I did was I had a look on the school website and the class website to have a look at what they've been learning. Then I was able to tailor whatever lesson to the previous learning, making sure I wasn't covering off something, and I tried to make it as personal to the school as possible. When I was speaking to my head teacher, she said it's obvious when people just download a lesson from TES or do the same idea for every single one, and it gets a little bit boring. She said that for the interview that I had, that there were two candidates who did the exact same lesson. It was obvious where it had come from. So use Instagram, use the tools that you have, ask people for any creative ideas, and just kind of make sure it's going to have to be a kind of whole bells and whistles lesson anyway, but make sure that you aren't out of your depth teaching it. I would suggest emailing the school before you go there and ask them if they can put labels on the children. I did this and it means that it's just a more personal experience. Lots of schools do it anyway, but lots of schools don't. So I just sent an email asking for labels on the children. I also asked for the ability of the children, if there are any special needs in there or anything I needed to know about, and what resources were available. Bringing your own resources just means that you're covered if anything happens. You don't want to get there and be like, oh, by the way, have you got 35 whiteboard pens that I can use? So I brought spares of everything. If there were sheets that I was using, I brought those. I made sure I had all the resources and spares just in case. Usually they will tell you if there is a program you might need to use for a PowerPoint. If you would like to, they'll tell you for ICT, but just double check what they have, because you don't want to be stuck with nothing in your lesson going to poo. In terms of the actual lesson observation, I would say teach as you normally do, otherwise you will feel uncomfortable. Don't go too big. Stay with what you are comfortable with, but obviously make it a wow lesson. Lots of people, their lesson hasn't gone as well as they had because they had too many parts to it, and they couldn't kind of stay on top of it. So that's kind of my lesson observation tips. In terms of my interview tips, the best thing I ever did was take in cue cards. I am absolutely fine in terms of the teaching part of an interview. I'm good, I'm chill, I can do it. When it gets to the interview part, the formal interview where they ask the questions, I freeze up and my brain goes blank. The best thing I did was create some cue cards with questions that I might be answered on with the answer there. As soon as I went in, I said, I've made these in case I have a mind blank. Is it okay if I use them? I actually only made them for my last one, I was going to say for the two, but I didn't. I made them for my third interview, my final interview. She said yes, and then I was able to look at it, and I didn't actually use them as much as I thought I would, but I was able to look at it and kind of jog my memory a little bit. I would say for every answer that you give, make sure you have evidence in terms of your personal experience. So I had a question on how I would deal with conflicts in the class and children if they are falling out. I was able to identify how I would deal with it and then give an example of a lesson or a small group activity that I'd done. So it just meant that I wasn't kind of thinking on my feet and absolutely panicking. In terms of the questions that you'll be asked, you'll most definitely be asked a safeguarding question, lots of differentiation questions. Lots of schools may be going onto mastery. I had loads of questions about mastery, maths mastery, so have a look at that. Lots of questions about your biggest flaw. Please do not say you're a perfectionist. It's, in my opinion, the worst answer that you can give. I'm trying to think what I got. What my best qualities are, my worst qualities are, a safeguarding question, how I deal with conflicts in the class, the best lesson I've ever taught, the worst lesson I've ever taught, my interests outside of school and what I could bring to the school. I can't remember any others. I would just suggest being honest, having a think and breathing. My personal statement, I'd put in there the church that I go to, and that was a great conversation starter. We talked about that and I was able to kind of calm myself down from there. I serve on a team called Greenlight, so I was also able to kind of tell them all about that and talk about how we could bring that to the school as well. I would say the most important thing is to be yourself, to be as happy and as smiley, and just show that you want to be there and you love teaching, because I think that makes anyone the best teacher that they can be. If the school offer you an opportunity for feedback, I would definitely say take it. Sometimes it's over email, sometimes it's over the phone, but I think it's really important to be able to reflect on the answers maybe that you gave or what kind of didn't go so well in your lesson observation, and then you can act on that for your next interview. I know it can be hard to kind of look at the reasons why you were rejected, so maybe even don't take, maybe I would accept the offer for the feedback, even if it just sits in your inbox, or even if it's a phone call that then you schedule for a week later when you aren't so hurt. Sounds like you're going through a breakup.
Hi! Just me from the photo booth, back at it again. I realised I didn't finish answering this question. I didn't finish what I was saying. I got a text and then it just kind of tailed off. What I was basically trying to say is if you can't accept the feedback, then save it until later because it's really valuable. On to my interview experiences. Bye!
I had a bit of a strange interview experience, if I am being honest. I had 3 job interviews. I was adamant that I wanted a faith school, to the point where before I got my job I had signed up for supply because I was like, I don't want a school that isn't a faith school. That's just personal experience for me, and I'm so happy I stuck with that decision, and I really kind of knew the school would be a good fit in terms of that. All very, very different schools. The first school was a primary school, so that went up to year 6, and it was a 3-form intake, so it was a large school. It was in an area where there were lots of people premium. In terms of this interview, it was the first one I'd applied for. I found the job on our local council website and I applied for it. I got an email to say that I had been selected for the interview and it would be the next week. I then didn't hear from the school until like the day before, because, and I'm still like a bit baffled by this, when I got home after I'd had the interview, I got a letter from the school identifying what they wanted me to do in the interview. I'm not sure why that wasn't sent out by email, but I was in cahoots, like emailing with the person, and she said you'll receive it on a letter, and I kind of said I haven't received the letter yet, and she said you'll receive the letter soon. It was all a bit strange. But for that interview I had a formal interview with the I never met the head teacher, the deputy head, assistant head and a governor. They were the 3 people that had sat in the interview panel with me. Before that I didn't have the task of teaching the children. I was given 2 pieces of science work. I had to level them, assess them, say which year they were from, and what I would do to improve the work. So I had that, and then my interview focused on that quite a bit as well. I wasn't aware that was going to happen. I was told there was a written task, and then when I did receive the letter, when I went back home that day, it had come through the post that day, it had more details in there that you'd be assessing children's work and you'd be overviewing children's work, but it was the first kind of time I'd ever been done that, and it was awful, and I will still stand by the fact that it was horrendous. Formal interviews aren't my thing, they're not my jam. I love the teaching part of interviews because that's where I'm happy, that's like my happy place, that's where I'm most comfortable. When it gets to the sit-down interview, I panic. I really, really panic. So the fact that it was all just kind of formal interview was horrendous. I cried when I got out because it was awful. It wasn't what I expected at all. It wasn't what the uni had briefed us on, and it just wasn't fantastic in terms of how I felt. I knew it had gone badly. So I got in the car, my car was going for its MOT, so my dad had taken me, and I just cried in the car, and he said, it wouldn't even be that bad, it's all experience. And I was like, I'm so embarrassed, it was awful. But now looking back, I know that school wouldn't have been a right fit for me. I got the call to be like, sorry, we've offered someone else, more experience, you can get feedback if you want to. So I did get feedback, and it was everything I would have expected in terms of that. My second interview, that was quite late, I want to say. That was like June-ish, I think. That interview process was over 2 days. The first day was a lesson observation where I taught shape poems to a year 3 class. I was given the spec, I think, of a literacy or maths task. So I went for literacy because that's what I like teaching. So I went for that. We did shape poems. It was lovely. They were a really lovely group, and then had a nice chat with the head teacher, and she gave me a few feedback on my lesson, and it was really lovely. And then I got a call that night to say that I'd been shortlisted to go in the next day for a formal interview. So I went into the formal interview, and there were like 3 of us sitting outside, which is horrendous, and the interview was nice, the interview was fine, and it was okay. I was nervous. I was really nervous. My answers weren't as good as they could have been, if I'm being honest, and I panicked. I freaked out lots. But she was really lovely, the head teacher was really lovely there, and she was kind of like, you know, well done. It was really tricky to shortlist this far. In my heart I kind of knew that I hadn't got it from there because I didn't answer the questions as well as I could have. And then I got a call that night to say that they needed to talk with the governors about shortlisting, so from the 3 to the 1 person who's going to get it. So that was horrendous. I remember I didn't sleep that night because I just wished I would have kind of been told. She phoned me at 7:30 that next morning and she was actually really apologetic and like, oh, we've given it to someone else. And then I contacted my base, kind of like my training base head teacher, and was like, I didn't get it, and she said yeah, they've given it to the school direct person who was at that school. Which I thought fair enough, she's probably better suited to the school, if I'm being honest. But then I did actually get a call after I got my job, the job that I've got now. I did get a call, I think 2 days after I'd accepted it or something, being like, that position's open again, we'd like to offer it to you. And I was like, I've got another job, thank you. My school. I've been really picky, which is why I only have 3 interviews. It's funny, it's nice, and I've been really picky, which is why I only had the 3 interviews. I knew I went to church school, I knew I wanted a school that was going to be a great fit for me, so I found the job that I have now, which is in a church school, and it was the best interview experience I had out of the 3. I'd actually already signed up for supply because I just thought I'm not going to find a job in a school that I want, and I don't want to just go for everything, so I'm just going to give myself some time to get some experience on supply. So I'd signed up for the supply agencies, which was an experience and a half anyway, and then I got a call. It was really late, it was like July, end of July I think. I got a call to kind of say, you've been shortlisted, can I just confirm your email address and we'll get the interview pack sent out to you. We'd love to invite you for a lesson observation and an interview. And I was like, okay, we can do this one last time. Like, I think because I was more relaxed about it, because I didn't think I was going to get a job at that point anyway, and because I was more chill about it, I think that really kind of made me feel more comfortable. Does that make sense? So it was all in one day. I had lesson observation in the morning, I had the lesson observation, which I was given the specification of a task to do with the rainforest. So I read a book called The Rainforest Grows All Around, I think, and it's lovely. And I'm really glad I did. And then we kind of put our explorer hats on and pretended that we were in the rainforest, and it was really fun. And I had that with about 6 children, half of who were actually in my class the next year, which was fun. So I had that. I then went and got a ham sandwich from Morrison's and had my formal interview, like the one-to-one interview with the head teacher and 2 governors that afternoon. So I think I had about an hour and a half between them. And then I got the call at 3 to say that I've got the job. And I couldn't believe it. I screamed a little bit down the phone to my head teacher, and she was like, congratulations. And as soon as she said that, I was like, are you joking? Before my camera battery dies, because it's flashing red at the moment, I'm sorry this video has been a little bit of a fail. In the end, you will. Be confident, believe in yourself, fake it till you make it. You'll be amazing. Make sure it's the right school for you so you are not stuck in a school that does not believe in the same values as you and you aren't a good fit with, and just absolutely smash it. I will see you next time. Goodbye!